Thank you so much for being here today, Philip. I'm really looking forward to asking the big questions and providing some context around the national standards for everybody.
Thanks, Brooklyn. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Okay. If you could introduce yourself to us, let us know a little bit about maybe your background and, you know, what you're doing now and the role that you're playing in terms of things like, you know, supporting vocationally qualified mental health professionals.
Okay. So my background is originally I was a soldier. I spent 15 years in the Australian Army, and on discharge I undertook some training to be a counsellor. So I actually started off as a diploma qualified counsellor, and I worked in with the RSL, working primarily with veterans. I did go through university and complete further studies, and after I had been working with veterans, I had my own private practice. And then after that, I then got a job working with ACA. ACA, that was in the year 2000. ACA was then a startup, very much in the same situation as we are right now. And I just, over that 20-odd year period, I took ACA from having a few members and a few counsellors, and we went through and we made a lot of advances. We got the private health funds, and we got into work cover. We got insurance. You know, we got recognised overseas by international organisations, and yeah, and I took ACA to where it was. And in 2023, I left ACA, and since then I've been doing work with the Mental Health Commission Queensland, and I've also been doing some clinical work, and I've been pottering about. I tried looking at retirement. It didn't quite work. I don't think I meant retirement. And then the Vocational Mental Health Practitioners Association of Australia approached me. But I'd like to take the helm of that, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll give it a go, because you know, I've always had a spot. I spent 15 years in the as part of the industry reference group under the old system. Of working with the vocational system. So I've had a bit of a soft spot for vocational course for a long time, and I just thought it would be interesting to at least be involved in at least getting some movement going for this association.
Brilliant. So what I would love to do is just give a quick overview of the things that we're going to touch on today, and we might go off topic and we might go out of order a little bit, but I would really love to get a little bit of information about the Vocational Mental Health Professionals Association of Australia and what it does for vocationally qualified mental health professionals, explore the national standards and what that can mean for people with that qualification, whether that's a diploma or advanced diploma. Look at the implications of that, maybe touch on issues around grandfathering and transitional arrangements, restriction of trade, you know, that's a big concern, and then sort of wrap up with, you know, just some awareness building and next steps really for people who are, you know, potentially impacted by all of this. Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about the association? Like, when was it formed, and, you know, what does it do? Who's it for?
Okay. As far as the forming of the association, I will say I didn't come on board until May. I was aware of the association. I'm aware of a lot of associations, but so I didn't come on until early May. So that's primarily been my experience. However, obviously, being the CEO, I know when it was formed. It was formed in November 2024. That's when it was constituted. It was registered as an organisation, and yeah, people need to understand that's what happened in November. It was registered as an organisation, and obviously from there, it then had to, you know, formulate itself, policies, and all the rest of it. So, so the purpose of the association is. One of the reasons I got involved, and I've had a lot of people actually contact me and ask me how I thought about getting involved in something like this, is that a lot of people with vocational qualifications don't feel that they're appropriately advocated for or represented at particularly at government level, but also within the not-for-profit sector, including employer groups, and other types of groups, and they feel that also that there seems to be an attitude that having a vocational qualification is second grade. It's not it's not equivalent to this, that, or the other, and I don't believe that personally. So given that opportunity, I thought, yeah, look, I'd like to do that because advocating is what I do. That's my strength. And certainly, if it's going to help the mental health situation in this country, which is dire by anybody's standards, then I'd absolutely like to be involved. And so, so I've taken on the position to help, vocational. So, and we're not just talking counsellors; we're talking peer support workers. We're talking living experience groups, and we're also talking mental health workers. So it is quite a broad group who certainly feel underrepresented at the current time.
Yeah, and I guess that brings me over to national standards. This is really, I guess, what it's the hot topic at the moment, especially after the petition has started going around and seems to be collecting a lot of momentum. It's fast approaching 800 signatures in such a short amount of time. It's really struck a nerve. So I would love to get some ideas from you about, what's the national standards? Like, can you walk us through them for people who are new or who might not have, read the document?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the national standards are a repercussion of many, many years of advocacy to the Department of Health and Ageing to have counsellors and psychotherapists formally recognised by the department, so that they can move on and get access to obviously some government funding, grants, potentially Medicare, a whole suite of different things. So that was the purpose. Minister Butler, 2023, I think it was, for the financial year. The following financial year said that the government was going to put aside $200,000 to get a consultant to look at bringing in some sort of national standards. There wasn't a lot of clarity on what that was. People didn't know whether it meant regulation, non-regulation, or whatever. But that's what came out, and so that process happened. What I can say is that I left the ACA in the profession late in 2023, so I haven't been involved in the processes of advocacy since then. I have kept an eye out. I've been aware of what is going on. But I haven't been involved in that process. So what I can say is that the consultants did their consultancy, came up with these standards after talking primarily with the ACA and VMPHAA, and came up with these standards, which they've now published. I think there's some significant issues and questions that need to be asked that, from my perspective, haven't been asked, and no one is asking.
Yeah, I agree. Even my reading of it, and I don't have as in-depth overview of it as you do, but certainly there's a lot of ambiguities, and that's been reflected in some of the discussions that are being held. My space is sort of Facebook, and this is what I'm seeing in my communities. And so I thought it might be helpful if we could perhaps address some of those questions today. And if you can answer them, that would be great. If you're not able to, fine. Yeah. So I guess, what are the implications for people who hold a diploma in terms of, I guess the big thing, well, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the big things is, will they still be allowed to have a private practice or not?
Yeah, look, the areas, the three areas that we as an association are looking at are only the areas that impact on vocationally qualified counsellors. We seem to have stirred up a bit of a hornet's nest, which I don't understand why, because we're not questioning or trying to change any of the standards for those with degrees and above. We're only looking at the vocational sector, which is our job. We are the Vocational Mental Health Practitioners Association of Australia, and our job is to look after our members in the vocational sector. So that's what we're doing. The areas that we're looking at primarily is the first one, which states that a graduate of a diploma of counselling cannot go straight into private practice. That brings up lots of questions. Counsellors with diplomas have been going straight into private practice since the late 1990s. Why suddenly is there an issue with it? The second part of that, though, is that a counsellor with a diploma may go into private practice if issued a licence by a peak body. The standards does not give us any details of license, what license, who's paying for the license, who holds the license, who's controlling the license, where's the money from the licenses going. It doesn't, there is no explanation. It just says the word license, which in Australia we don't license, we usually register, but it talks about a license. And it says after 450 to 700 hours. Well, that's a difference of a couple hundred hours. Is it 450 or is it 700? Or is somebody going to arbitrarily choose some? Again, to me, that seems a little bit crazy. But also, the fact is, the majority of diploma counsellors who go into private practice or getting employment are not doing clinical work anyway. So where they're going to get their 450 hours client contact time from? It's going to take years before they get that, which is going to deny the Australian public access to highly qualified, lived experience, mature age people who want to come into the counselling profession. And what's the reason for that? There is no research that supports why that should happen. There's no evidence that should support why that. I did read a vague statement that apparently if you do a comparison between complaints from one peak body to the entire diploma field, that there's more complaints being made about diploma qualified counsellors. Hey, diploma qualified counsellors have been around since the late 1990s. Degree qualified counselling is a relatively new qualification, so that you wouldn't get away with that at uni if you were to try to use a statistic like that at university on the basis that it's not a proper comparison, particularly when you're only comparing them to your own members, but then you're comparing the wider, broader profession. So yeah, so that's ridiculous. There has not been bucket loads of complaints every year, specifically about diploma qualified counsellors who go into private practice. Yes, there's been complaints, absolutely. I don't deny that. But there are also complaint bodies that people can go to for those. There's the HCCC. Each state and territory has a commissioner that you can make complaints to. So the public has access to a complaints mechanism to if they have an issue with those. Same as they can also go to the peak bodies. So that makes no sense. So yeah, but also, is it a restriction of trade? Well, I think it is. I've sought legal advice, and they tend to believe that it is a form of restriction of trade, on the basis that why arbitrarily have counsellors been plucked out of all the allied health professions, and we're not the only allied health profession that has diplomas. We've been plucked out, and we've been told that for no reason, there's no research, there's no evidence, there's no nothing, but we can't go into private practice, even though we've been doing it for over 30 years. And there's no evidence to suggest that we've been any harm to the public. If there was harm to the public, we would have been regulated. And the government has been telling me personally for over 25 years, it will not regulate counselling because there is no evidence of any major harm. So you know, I have an issue with that, and so I think there's a principle there. But I put it to the listeners. Well, part of my principle is if they do it to counselling and they set a precedent, what makes people think they're not going to do it to other professions? Because they're doing it without any evidence, any research. Now, look, some of the peak bodies may have made that recommendation, and that's fine. They're entitled to, and they're entitled to make it for that. But on the basis of the majority of their members are degree qualified is not a reason to suddenly put the vocational people out of business, which from where I'm sitting seems to be a conflict of interest. But I can say I have a conflict of interest because I only represent vocational, but I don't do it at the expense of higher degree. And I think, you know, people on that side of the fence need to have a look over and say, why are we doing it at the expense of diplomas? It is not going to do. It's not going to harm the profession or anything anymore. We just need to clarify where are the boundaries of the professions, but also why we're going to deny Australians access to thousands and thousands of experienced qualified practitioners.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say part two of that. So part two of that is telling that diploma qualified counsellors, even if they get they do the same supervision qualification courses as the degree qualified counsellors, if they do one of those courses, they can't become supervisors. We've been delivering supervision courses. I mean, when I was at ACA, from 2002, supervision courses have been delivered, and counsellors with diplomas have been doing them. So again, since 2002 to 2025, there hasn't been an issue. And again, there's no record of a large portion of complaints or anything else against those diploma qualified counsellors. So why now, again, arbitrarily, because there's no research, there's no evidence, there's no nothing else, why suddenly can't a diploma qualified counsellor do a supervision course and become a supervisor? Now, yes, it makes sense that they shouldn't supervise somebody who's working in the clinical area, usually somebody with a degree or so. Yeah, that makes sense. But why can't a diploma qualified counsellor get a supervision qualification and supervise other diploma qualified counsellors? There is no sanity to that restriction at all.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The other thing that I was thinking about when you were speaking there was when the counsellors got their diploma, that was recognised as you're competent, off you go. You can go and do the work. And now it feels like the goalposts are shifting.
Yeah, and you got to ask yourself why. The simple fact is, if you read the ASQA legislation, who are the accrediting bodies for the TAFE system, and you read the legislation in TAFE, it is very clear that the qualification of a diploma is an entry point into a profession, and that's what it states: entry point into a profession. It doesn't say restricted entry point or entry point, depending on what other people who may have a high qualification think. It says an entry point. And as I said, and we've got decades of experience and data on that shows that a diploma qualified counsellor does not get worse or less outcomes than a degree qualified counsellor. The research is very specific on that. So it's not like we're dumbing it down or we're bringing a lower standard. We're just asking to maintain the current standard. But I don't have an issue with them saying, well, let's draw some boundaries. So there's clear boundaries between vocational qualifications and degrees. I don't have an issue with that. I think that makes sense. But telling somebody that they can't practice anymore, or that a qualification is no longer valid, that's not drawing a boundary.
No. And I guess too, you touched on licensing before. Somebody was asking this morning in group supervision for people who have diplomas about, well, what about contact hours or practice hours? You know, it stipulates in the standards that you need to have this many or that many. And I guess people wondering, like, how are they going to be assessed? How does somebody prove that they've done those hours? Is there anything that you can say to people about that?
Well, what I can say to that is it's a very good question that has no answer, because the standards are ambiguous. They not only that, they're vague. They mention grandparenting once in the entire document. It mentions grandparenting once, and it's at the end of the document, and it doesn't clarify what does that mean. It doesn't define it. It doesn't say who can do it, how it's going to be done, where the authority comes from. The same thing with the licensing process is that there is no clarity to it. Now, it's okay. Some peak body or some representative saying, oh, look, no, it's okay. We'll look after you. Well, what we'll do is we'll design this and design that. Say, hey, no, would you sign a contract to buy a car before somebody put the price on the contract? Because that's what you're doing by accepting these national standards, and somebody saying, oh, don't worry about it. We'll look after you once we've got the standard through. Excuse me, I'd like to see in writing the definition, the pathway, who's doing it, what's the cost, and is it annual? Is it 3 yearly? Is it renewal? But also, if one organisation gets the ability to issue those licenses or cost, that's a monopoly. I question monopolies in particularly not-for-profit and also in the mental health space, because you don't want to give somebody a license to print money by suddenly saying, oh, this is the license, this is the auditing, and this is what you have to do every 3 years. Why? Because we say so.
That's such a good point. I hadn't even considered that, but you're right. Yeah.
And so again, this is the problem with the national standards. There is no clarity. They're ambiguous, and as I said, they're vague. It just mentions apparently these processes are going to happen. Show me the processes, show me the documents, tell me how it's going to happen, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to support something that just says, oh, this may happen or won't, or somebody telling me they'll look after it after we let these. So after you've told me I can't practice anymore, you're going to write a pathway so I can practice. Well, I'm not putting my livelihood on anyone's word on that one.
Yeah, and that pathway, I was going to say, gets me fired up. My people know that I get very emotional about things. I get very passionate about things. But one of the big things for me with these standards is understanding that, you know, as a woman later in my career, I'm 50. The median age is 50 of all counsellors in Australia. 80% of all counsellors are women. And one study says that 83% of them are in private practice. Another says it's 43%. So let's split the difference and say, you know, the bulk of them are all in private practice. And we know that a lot of people who have a diploma, who've completed a diploma qualification, those numbers aren't reflected in membership numbers. So there's a whole lot of people out there practicing who aren't in ACA or PACFA as well. I mean, to suddenly say, okay, stop, you can't practice, but we'll give you a grace period so you can, you know, toddle off to university and get yourself a qualification. It's, I guess it you know, puts a fire in my belly to try and do something to support these, you know, women. I understand it's men as majority here, because how feasible is it for them to find the money to go to university, to essentially get a qualification to do something that they're already doing and competent in and doing well? How do they support themselves if they're not able to continue in their private practice while they're studying? Where does the money come from? And yeah, they're not going to be able to do it many full time. Be a part-time stretch, and before they go to university, they're going to have to go and do year 12 subjects. So they've got, you know.
I think you come up with a very, very valid point there, because the rhetoric is we will do pathways and we will find ways for you to come in and continue. But now, are they going to do that so I, as a diploma qualified counsellor, can maintain my practice at my current level? Or what they're really saying is, what we'll do is we'll let you come into our association and you can pay us for the privilege. But in the meantime, you must undertake a degree. And if you don't in 3 years' time, you can't practice anymore. But when you get that degree, you can be a full member of our association and you can pay us our full fee. Now, a bit of a money trail going on here. But also taking that out of the picture, because that may not necessarily be what's driving them, but taking that out of the picture, that's not a pathway. That's actually saying you will get it, you will meet our standards. We'll just give you a grace period. So we'll give you a sunset period to do it. So technically what they're saying is, with a diploma, you can continue to practice as long as you do this and get a degree. So what they're saying is, no, you can't continue to practice with a diploma. We're just going to prolong the pain for a few more years, and you can spend another $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to get the qualifications you need to meet our standard. For what? So during that 3-year process, they're still going to be seeing the same clients. They're going to be seeing the same clients that have been seen for the last 5 to 10 years, and getting the same results. And if they've got no desire to become a clinician, it really, where's it going to take them? I mean, again, I come back to this, people have been practicing and they're practicing in their skill set and they're meeting a need, and we know that the Australian public needs that. Then why are we forcing them to go into the tertiary sector and get a degree qualification if they're happy practicing within the level and skill set they're practicing. It makes no sense. And again, you touched on the point of representation. I mean, PACFA has a minimum degree level, and that's fine. I'm a member of PACFA, that's okay. No issues with that. But contacting them as the consultants and saying we'd like you to get the information out there to your members, and then the expectation that suddenly all these diploma qualified people are going to know, because PACFA says that ain't going to happen. They may know some, and they have a significant network, and some where the word might get through, but not a lot. ACA, from my estimates, when you look at what the ATO claims, the amount of people who identify as a counsellor, less than 20% of its membership are of its full members, that is, not student members, but it's full members are sorry, less than 20% of those who have got a diploma are actually members of ACA. Not percentage of members of ACA. So of all the qualified counsellors out there with a diploma, around about 20% of them are members of ACA. So they're going to be underrepresented if that is the only way that you're going to get it out. Now, those consultants got over $300,000, several years to do this consultancy, and the best they came up with was 340, 360 respondents. Of those, only 200 were actually from councils themselves, not from organisations. And to claim that a profession, I mean, we know according to ASQA figures alone from completions of diplomas at RDOs and that, over 50,000 in just the last 5 years. So that's not representative of vocational qualified. But just to test that, we did a petition that went out there, as you brought up before, and we've probably got over 800 signatures on that. We've done that in 3 days with no money. No one gave us $300,000 and access to experts or anything else. We did that. And the majority of the people who signed that petition have identified as being diploma qualified counsellors, with a large proportion saying they had no idea that the standards had been written, that they were going to be held under those standards or anything else. So again, it's not necessarily about the standards. It's you introducing and enforcing particularly arbitrary things like you can't practice on a group of people or a community of people without their say-so. It's just not the Australian way.
Yeah. And to say there was robust consultation and overwhelming support from everybody, I think, even if you just combine the membership numbers of the two peak bodies, it's roughly, I think it's like 35,400. Right? Yeah. So say 3,500, and then you deduct the 300 odd, because just round figures, that still leaves 34,700 unrepresented. Counsellors that are going to be impacted one way or another, which is
and you can throw in there, and I've heard it, let's blame the counsellors. Now let's just blame the counsellors. They didn't care, they don't know, they didn't fill in the responses, it's all their fault. I say, hey, whoa, let's not be so quick, because we can't verify that, we can't validate that statement. But let's flip it around. The consultants were given $300,000 in 2 years to do this. If we can contact 800 in less than a week without any money, I challenge you to say maybe it's not the counsellors who didn't care. Maybe there's just a lot of them out there who didn't know, who should be brought into this consultation process, because it impacts on them. And so we need to look at that before we start saying you can't practice, you can't be a supervisor, you can't this, you can't that. Is there overall support for that? I don't think so.
Yeah, and you touched on, a really important point there that's coming up a lot in online discussions about it as well, and that's about the timelines, and people had opportunities to participate in consultations, and if you missed the boat, too bad, so sad, you had your chance, kind of thing. And I just think it's very interesting. I was having a look over the weekend at how information was disseminated around the national standards, and I could see that peak bodies did have information on their website, and PACFA had loads of information. ACA didn't have as much that I was able to find, but I also understand that emails were sent out to members and things like this. But at the same time, you know, email open rates, you know, on a good day in our industry are between, you know, 23 and 25%. So for every 100 that opened, there were 75 odd roughly that didn't open an email. But yeah, I just wanted to know, did you have any thoughts on that? And
yeah, look, I don't lay blame with the peak bodies. I absolutely do not lay blame with ACA or PACPA in that regard. They both did what they could. The problem being that the consultants should have identified very early on in the case that a significant proportion of diploma graduates are not members, well, they can't be a member of PACPA, and are not members of ACA. Therefore, that they needed to reach out in other ways, doing exactly what we did. It didn't take us long to reach out there. You know, my networks are certainly not larger than PACPA's or ACA's, let alone put them together combined. And yet we still got 800 and growing as we're speaking, people responding to a simple petition. And that petition is to get the word out there about the standards, but also it is to demonstrate that it's not that hard to get that information. So as I said, I'm not laying the blame at the peak bodies at all. What I'm saying is that the process, therefore the information that came in from the process is questionable. You have to question the outcomes based on a very limited and small amount of numbers that have come in. To suddenly say, because 360 or 340 whatever respondents came in, suddenly we're going to ban an entire community from practice, and we're not going to allow them to be supervisors, even though there's no research that supports the contention. I mean, where those contentions came up from in the first place, I have no idea. I wasn't involved in those conversations, so I don't know who sat down and said, oh, we wouldn't let them be supervisors. I'd like to know what was the basis of that, who made the statement, and what was the basis for it, because I'd say there's got to be an agenda there, because it makes no sense. But also, suddenly you can't practice until you've got 450 or maybe 700 hours, even though we've been doing this for 30 odd years. And I know that doesn't necessarily make it right, and I agree it can be tightened up, and we can have the boundary for it, which is the whole purpose of the vocational association, is to help to do that. But I think it's a bit drastic just to bar an entire qualification that is being that it's actually a pretty good qualification, that the diplomas for what they do.
Yeah. One of the other questions that came up, Philip, was about can I still call myself a counsellor? It's not a protected title. Do the standards apply to me? Yeah.
Okay. So again, it's ambiguous because there is no statements about who is going to be authorised, what the authority is, or anything else. What my understanding is that these standards are simply that they're a recommendation that will be signed off by government, but there's no legislative, there's no legislation that supports it, so there's no foundation to them, so they're not mandatory. So you can say, well, I'm going to practice anyway, and there's not much anyone can do about it, but it's not a good look for the profession. We don't want people practicing who don't come under a national standard if there is one. But we also want that national standard to be fair and inclusive, and equity would be very nice. And if that happens, then it's a different story. But currently, the word counsellor is not a title and never will be. And not because it should. I'd like it to be protected like everybody else, but it can't be, because it's in too broad a use in our society. And the government's been very clear about that. And to be title protected, you'd have to be regulated. The government's been very clear it doesn't want to regulate counselling. And I use the word counselling here. I don't use the word psychotherapy, because the Vocational Association, we are talking about diplomas of counselling. So we don't cover psychotherapy. So psychotherapists, please don't get all wound up. We're not talking about you or bringing you under this umbrella. This is about counselling. So the title will never be the title counsellor, because it's in such broad use. It's unlikely it will ever be protected. But also, these national standards are, from what I understand, are not a mandatory requirement, so they won't be embedded through legislation. But again, there's nothing in there that tells you exactly how these things are going to, how the standards are going to be. Well, are they going to be enforced, or they're not going to be enforced? Again, there's so much ambiguity
Mm, mm. And I guess too, I was wondering, like, do the standards, or, potentially, is it a case that the standards might only apply to you if you're a member of ACA or PACFA? Like, if you're a member of
Well,
maybe a different body, because there are lots
well,
of them around and they don't subscribe, I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you're a member of PACFA, then again, yeah. I mean, I'm representing the vocational sector, so I'm not sure why PACFA's getting so. Why the rhetoric is not only is it personal, but it is it's aggressive, to say the least. We're only talking about the vocational sector, so we're not talking about so it doesn't impact on them anyway in that sense. We're not talking about changing it. That's not our business. That's their business. They're good at what they do. They look after that sector, and that's great. Do a good job. ACA, I don't know, because there's been nothing from ACA, but I don't understand if ACA is going to continue to accept diploma qualified counsellors. Is it going to tell them that they can't practice? Because if it's going to come under the national standards, which it will have to for its degree qualified members, then what does it do with its diploma? That means that it's going to have to implement it for the diploma members. But it can't have both. It can't say, well, the national standards go for our level 3 and 4 members, or level 2, 3, and 4 members, but our level 1 members, our diplomas, the national standards don't stand. You can go into private practice if you want, and we'll give you insurance and so on and so forth. So again, I can't. Obviously, ACA under no obligation to bring me in, tell me what they're doing, but it would be nice if they told the industry what they were doing as far as these standards. Because again, this is the problem. There is no information coming from anywhere as to exactly how anything's going to be done. We're just expected to sign a blank contract and let people fill it in afterwards.
Yeah. So what happens then to, counsellors who are vocationally qualified, who maybe, don't want to go with ACA because, they disagree with the standards, or they want to go and start their own business and things like, they're already in business and they don't necessarily have the inclination or the means, or, to put it all on pause for a period of time while they go and get qualified. What happens to them? Where do they go? How do they get representation?
Okay, well, I mean, to be clear, the Vocational Association wasn't started up as a competition to ACA. It was started up as an alternative for choices. We live in a democracy. People should have choices. Right now, what I see is counselling starting to become a monopoly, and I don't think that's the reason why psychology doesn't have a monopoly, because that's what happened in psychology. It started out with one organisation telling everybody what to do, and people started saying, "Hey, this is no good. I think we should." And psychology's now got 3 primary people, but it's got actually a bunch of other smaller associations. And so, I look at psychology and think, well, counselling is not that much different. There's no reason why counselling shouldn't have choices. But what we've done is we've only focused on the vocational sector because, as I said at the beginning, we believe the vocational sector is underrepresented, and we want people to join us. ACA works in both sectors, and that's fine. That's what they do. I'm not how they're going to make that work with the national standards. I have no idea. That's up to them. But we solely and wholly represent the vocational sector, and that's all we're interested in doing, is looking after the vocational sector, who are underrepresented. I mean, there's no proper representation for mental health workers, and a lot of the vocational qualifications we accept for membership, there isn't proper representation. So that's what we're here for, and the national standards will be the national standards, but this association is not going anywhere. Those standards would have to be enforced under legislation before we wouldn't be able to take on members, keeping the current standards that we have, which is it must be a fully accredited diploma, AQF level 5 for counsellors, and we're talking about 4 diplomas for mental health workers, and obviously there's peer support workers and so on and so forth. So those standards are solid. They've got to be ASQA accredited, and they have to be delivered by an RTO or a TAFE. So I think that's a pretty solid standard. So the vocational mental health practitioners association isn't going anywhere. So we're happy for people, if they like what we do, they like the culture, they like how we talk, be there. If not, you've got choices of other associations, and members of other associations now have a new choice.
Yeah. And, somebody was asking me, do they get the same level of, I guess, support from the Vocational Mental Health Professionals Association as they do from ACA in terms of insurance, in terms of CPD, code of ethics? Is it still sort of strong and things like that?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the vocational, as an association, we're not here to dumb down or bring in lower standards. There's no credibility or there's nothing to be gained by that at all. We're here to maintain current high standards that are within our professions. We're doing things just a little bit differently, that's all. But absolutely, we have insurance for our members. We certainly have a code of conduct. I would suggest our governance actually is tighter than anyone else's. We actually have a legal counsel as part of the governance process within the association. We have an advisory board that is made up of some extremely experienced people, and that advisory board is growing. We've now got people who are specialising in domestic violence who want to be part of it. We've got a group working as First Nations want to be part of it. So people want to join the advisory board, which advises the board. So the board isn't sitting in isolation, making decisions without understanding what's happening at the growth level. So the association has all of that. As far as recognition, we want to get in until we're in a bit of a catch-22. You need numbers to do anything in this game, particularly with government. So we're asking people to please join the association and help us with the numbers to help us to advocate on their behalf. But certainly we're going to be looking at employment, all the issues that is relevant to people in the vocational area, which is certainly PD. We have PD policy. Supervision is a mandatory requirement for practicing counsellors and LLE and peer support workers. It's just that the supervision is looking at different levels. The supervision that the council does is not appropriate for an LLE worker. So we're looking at different. How does that look? What sort of supervision should that be? So we're doing all that work, and if we get the support that we're hoping to get, the more support we get, the more we'll be able to do for our members.
Yeah, and I think I was reading on the website, students can join, complimentary, without it.
Yeah. Joining fees, if you have a look at them, are lower than most. And there's a reason for that. It's because we absolutely understand that our members are not at the top of the rung when it comes to wages and income. So that's reflected in the price. And we don't have extra prices for this and extra prices for that. And when it comes to courses, we don't accredit courses. That's ASQA's job. They're the authority. They have legislation. We're not going to self-empower ourselves to tell other organisations what to do. So we don't charge training organisations for accreditation. So again, it's not about money. This is not a revenue stream. So as I said, the courses simply have to meet the ASQA, delivered by an RTO, meet AQF qualification standards. It meets those. Then the graduates of those courses are eligible. We're not going to sit down and say, well, because you went to that school, you can join, but because you went to that school, you can't. Even though the qualifications are the same. We're not going to be saying that at all. We're going to be saying the qualification is what we're looking for, not who delivered it. We will have standards as far as who delivers it. And obviously, we will have our own way of checking to make sure that the providers are delivering courses in the way that they're supposed to. But also, that's ASQA's job. They audit organisations. So as far as all that's concerned, as I said, I think our standards are certainly equivalent, if not higher than some in some areas.
And I think I saw there too that if you're not a student, you can join and receive 18 months membership for the normal 12-month fee. Is that right?
Yep. And the reason for that is simply we are growing and we are developing. So what we're asking is for a bit of a grace period to be able to grow and develop. Therefore, even though we're asking for 12 months, we're saying we'll give you 16 months because we know that we're not going to necessarily give you maybe the same support that you're used to. Although the feedback we're getting from members already is we're answering emails quicker, we're responding quicker to questions. They like the website. Website, look, like any website, it does need some work. This is a new association. We haven't been around long, so we're certainly filling our way.
And I guess just as we wrap up, one of the things that I wanted to touch on is, do you see there are any opportunities for counsellors with a vocational qualification at the moment in light of the national standards, whether we can make change or not? Like, do you see opportunities?
But this is the extraordinary thing about the national standards. I don't understand it. This is absolutely not only is it a growth field and being recognised by the government, and everybody knows that the services out there, they're just short on the ground. There's waiting lists at all levels. This is a growth industry, and we want to be part of that. And we want to make sure that our members go into their industries. As I said, we support more than one. Go into industries with the best possible support and help, and can provide the best standards possible. And employers or the consumer, if they're private practitioners, is going to get a service that is top notch by somebody who is accountable for that service. So look, it is absolutely growing, which again makes no sense to me because the need is greater than the supply out there, and to suddenly cut off thousands of practitioners who are currently in practice, because it's all right, as I said, people saying, oh yeah, but we'll be able to. No, show me in writing, because I don't see any of that in writing. It just says, thou shalt not practice. That's what it says. And it said, thou shalt not become a supervisor. That's what it says. But we will. I want to see that in writing before I support anything. All those people are suddenly going to be coded. So we're actually going to add to unemployment. We're going to be adding to the significant shortage of supervisors. But what we're going to do is, I bet your supervision prices go up because there's going to be a monopoly on who can deliver supervision once you cut out all the diploma graduates. Is that an agenda? Who knows? Or is that why people are kicking up a stink? I don't know. But certainly it could have an impact in that way. So there are many different things that we need to look at and take into consideration. But I will bring up one point that has been asked, and that was our timing. So I just want to give people a timeline. So the association was founded in November 2024. When I say founded, that means that a group of people went and they registered. It wasn't an association, it was founded. Now there's a big difference. It wasn't up and running. You don't just suddenly have members and all sorts of. So it took quite a while, and it was a while through that process that I was then approached. And one thing I said to them, because I was aware of the national standards, I said, have you seen the national standards? Because I've all this time been expecting somebody to pick up these points that I've picked up, but no one has. So I've been surprised by that. But I said, have you? And they said, oh, so we better do something about that. And we recognised the consultation process was over. So now we do recognise that. It was over, but we thought we did the right thing. So the first thing we did was, and this was back in May, we reached out to the consultants and we said, look, we're aware that the consultation process is over, but we're in a talking profession, and we think we'd just like to have a say, because we've got a lot of people who are telling us that they're not happy. Can we have just a discussion with you about the national standards and what you found? All we wanted was a discussion. Big fat no. Consultation process is over. We're not interested in anything you have to say. Go away. So okay. So that only left us to then go to the mental health workforce, who were promulgating it. So that was in the 7th of May. We didn't get a response from them until the 23rd of May. So then we went to we went to Andrew Giles, actually, because he's the Minister for Skills and Training, and that was on the 20th of May. Not interested. It's a mental health issue. Okay. We thought it was a training issue, but anyway. So then we were referred to the Department of Health. Went to the Department of Health, who then said no, and referred us to Senator McBride, saying that she's Assistant Minister for Mental Health. Said okay, fine. So we finally got to her office, and then we were told that no, sorry, too busy. However, we were happy to have an advisor speak to you, and that again took several weeks. We now have a meeting, and I'm not going to let anybody know when, because some of the rhetoric's out there, as I said, it's I think it's well out of proportion to the issues at hand. But we're meeting with an advisor. But unfortunately, as you said, time has got the best of us. And yes, I know this is after the case. But since when in Australia do we close the door and not open it again? This is not the country I was brought up in. Yeah, if somebody's hurt, we go to court, and that you can reopen cases, you can appeal, you can do this and the other. So I don't understand why a profession made up of people who are there to help people who've been disempowered, who have no voice, are getting so upset, because that's what we're asking for. We're simply asking, we have a voice, we want it to be heard. We are aware this is after the case. We're sorry, it's not done on purpose. But these people's voice doesn't just go away just because somebody says the consultation process is over. Sorry. But yeah, I think I just don't understand people's mentality on this one. There's a principle involved here. People's livelihoods are at stake. People's practice is at stake. Limiting access to mental health services in Australia is at stake. We have a group of thousands of people who have a voice, who want their voice to be heard, and yet there are people simply going, oh no, because the consultation process is over, you don't count anymore. You don't have a voice. Your opinion doesn't matter. No, sorry. That's not the country I was brought up in. It's not the profession I was brought up in. I represent people all the time who have no voice, who've been disenfranchised and have been told no, or the door's shut, and we get them help. It's the Australian way. It's what we do. So I won't cop this. The consultation process is over. And I am surprised that people who work in mental health can actually kid themselves into believing that that's a valid reason why a large group of people who have a voice, who simply want to have a discussion, should be shut out. Sorry, but that's my. I have very strong feelings on this.
You know, I was going to ask you for some inspiring words to close off our interview with, but I think you've just done it.
Thank you. As I said, it wasn't planned. I'm struggling to understand some of what's going on right now within my own profession. Just the response to this, I've never seen such aggressive and negative personal put downs and attacks on people, simply for trying to advocate for people who don't have a voice. Yeah. I just find it surprising.
Yeah, it's surprising and it's disappointing, but you know, there's hope, and there is a voice. There is a voice now, and you know, you were saying there that you know, you came into all of this in May, and it's only the second week of June, and look how much has happened. I mean, there's been so much activity in terms of like reaching out, trying to get appointments, trying to get meetings, trying to be heard. There's just been so much just in 6 weeks, and that's a real credit to you.
And I think people need to understand and give us some credit. We tried to do it the right way. Now, we went to the consult. We didn't want this to be a big deal. We were just interested. There was a couple of little points of the standards that we wanted to discuss and understand why they were what they were, that don't impact on the tertiary sector at all. And then people just kept shutting doors in their faces, and we got to the point where we have to escalate. Do we either allow these people to keep us quiet, or do we escalate to a point where people have to hear us whether they like it or not? My entire experience in working in mental health, that's what most of us do, is we do what we need to do before we get hurt. Otherwise, mental health in this country would be a lot worse than it is now. But I don't think anyone's going to be harmed by this. I mean, what we're asking for, it's not like the national standards come in July 1 or July 2, suddenly councils are going to get rebates, they're going to get this, they're going to get that. I think that's pie in the sky, because I've seen nothing in writing. I've heard a lot of rhetoric, but I've seen nothing in writing that suggests anything significant is going to happen. And if it does, I don't think okay, so we might wait a few weeks. We wait 20 odd years now to get to this point. I don't see how a couple of months is going to hurt. because we're not asking anybody to change anything outside of our membership. We're not asking them to change that at all. So I understand if people could be disappointed and they could be ticked off because we're lengthening a process that's already taken 2 years. Look, I can understand that. That's easy to understand. But the way the response has been, I don't understand.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I say to my community is always everybody's views and perspectives are welcome here. I think that's how we learn, and I really enjoy hearing different perspectives and points of view, and you know, healthy, robust discussions about things. But they always just need to be respectful, and if people can't do that, then the conversation's closed and we just walk away. But yeah, always discussion is a good thing, and I think it's how we grow. I think it's how we learn. You know, I don't have a fixed mindset. I'm sure you don't either. I'm open to, like, somebody gives me some information I hadn't thought about before and it makes sense. Great, change my mind. Like, not a problem. But there's no need for, you know, personal attacks, all the horrible things that, you know, we've both seen, and other people as well. You know, there are other people in the community that are doing things. I'm just speaking recently, like over the last few days, because it's on my mind, and that's about the petition. But there've been people sharing the petition that have had you know, difficult experiences as well. And I want to acknowledge, you know, the good work that so many people have been doing behind the scenes to try and help give voice to the national standards. And I think, you know, one of the points we didn't get to discuss today, but it was on my list, was about they're not really inclusive. Yeah. And, you know, I just think it's so important. But anyway, we'll finish there. Any final words?
Look, no, just yeah, if you believe in what we're doing and what we're saying, please join us. There are many different levels. You don't have to be a qualified practitioner to join the association. We have associate levels and all sorts of things. So please support us in that way if you are a practitioner or you're qualified and like to join an association. If not, please do support the petition and the rest of the advocacy, because there is more advocacy coming. And so we would like as many people to support us as possible, so that we can eventually sit down and have a discussion.
I love that. I think that needs to be, you know, on a sticker or a t-shirt. There's more advocacy coming.
Yeah.
for a group that haven't had, you know, haven't enjoyed that before, or to this level. I think that's really important. And just in terms of counsellors, maybe, you know, with diplomas, because that's your thing, what should they do in terms of their next steps, apart from petitions and joining and stuff like that? But should they be checking department websites for information? Should they be like holding the faith? What should they, any advice?
Well, they should. Well, it's more about what you said about spreading the word, but also, you know, don't be shy about contacting your local member. The more information, I mean, if a local member gets a letter from somebody, they have to read it and they have to respond. And if it's to do with a federal issue, it has to go on to the department. So now, don't be shy about contacting your local member. I mean, if you are a qualified practitioner, this is your livelihood we're talking about. And as I said, if you're happy about signing a blank contract, fine, but I don't think most of us are, and that's exactly what's happening right now. Is we've been asked to sign a blank contract, not in our interest. Let's get the details. Let's get the small print out in the open, and find out exactly what it is that people want, how things are going to be done, and then let's get on with it.
Okay, great. And then just lastly, you mentioned about letters, and that made me remember, you know, a previous email that you'd sent around saying that, we can come for templates. Is that, do you think it might be possible that we could get a template for people to?
I can get admin to send a copy to you, Brooklyn, and you can put it on your site. And I'm pretty sure our admin's working to get these letters on our website so people can use them as well.
Great, fantastic, because I think that'd be really helpful if we can make it easier for people to take action. It works. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and thank you to all the listeners and people out there, particularly those who support us. And I don't in any way suggest that people have to agree with us. You're allowed. Yeah, this is a free country. This is democracy. If you disagree, that's fine, but be respectful and professional about how you disagree.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.